Alright, so the update in here is that brackets are up. It looks a bit of a mess there now, but basically the brackets, the studs are 600 between each other, so 600 between each other. First bracket's a metre off the ground, second bracket's 2 metres. The system, the Isover Optima system says one bracket 1300 high up to ceilings of 2.4 metres. So if your ceiling's above 2.4 metres, you need a second bracket. That ceiling is 2.74. So I put another bracket in and I just brought the first one down a bit. So that's the story on the walls, where there is no window basically, and there's 600 between. So this looks like a bit of a mess. I'll just explain what's going on here. So obviously I brought the bracket up a small bit, just where the window is, and down as well. Basically with every window opening you need a stud to come up along the side of the window, regardless of where your other studs are falling, or 600. So the first thing you do is put a stud either side of the window. So this bracket here and that bracket there above it is for the trimmer along the window. Same there. So the next bracket here, right, that one, there's one below it. It's going to be a stud put there, and that's basically where the radiator is going to be held on. So this one here is 600 to this one, and then we have another 600. Then we have another 600 to here, to this outside one. This one here, like the other one, and the one below is to hold the radiator. Sorry, this one here and that one there to hold the radiator. The middle one and that one up here is the trimmer for the window. So it looks like a bit of a mess. There's going to be 3 studs kind of there beside each other. One's going to be a trimmer for the window, one's going to be holding the radiator, and the other one is going to be the 600. Regardless of how near they are to the other stud, you still have to have them bang on 600. Sheets are 1200 wide. So you'll be half on this stud here, that one will be in the middle, and then it'll be half on that one there. And the same going all the way along. So the 600 is measured from that corner up to there. It's coming in fairly close to the end wall. That's more or less it. So the next step will be to start out the pipes for the radiator. They're going to be the bigger radiator going on than what was there before. So there's going to be a pipe brought out and around to the side of where the new radiator is, same both sides. That plug is going to be brought out onto a surface box. So is that one, not a surface box, a slab box. They're going to sit on the slab obviously, and then new switches are going in them. We're going to introduce a switch for the light above the bed. It's going to sit here somewhere on the wall. So we'll get the pipework sorted. We'll isolate them switches, have the wires ready to come through the slabs, and then the insulation will be put up. You kind of have to push the insulation through. It's 100mm metac insulation, so it has to be pushed through the brackets. And there was wardrobes here, and these nails are sticking out slightly, which is actually handy. There's a load of them on the wall. They're going to help to actually hold up the insulation before the vapor barrier membrane and the studs go in. So the insulation goes on the wall, and then you put up your studs and plumb them. Make sure they're in the right place, plumb them. So basically what happens with these brackets is studs are going to sit in there and they're going to be screwed into the side. I'm going to try and get some footage, or a time lapse probably, of a bit of work actually being done, because I know myself I wouldn't even watch these videos, because hearing someone explain work being done is boring. You want to actually be able to see a bit of work being done, so I'm going to try and get a time lapse of the studs going up, and the insulation and the vapor barrier, maybe the slabbing as well, because in fairness, the The rail around is basic enough, just keep it 100mm off the wall, make sure it's plumb with lasers and stuff like that. And then the brackets, you position them even enough on the wall, and then at the centres, obviously 600 centres we're going on. Some people would do 400, we'll say, in a normal stud wall, but obviously this is being supported by the wall, so the wall is supporting the wall, so 600 is sufficient. And try and get a bit of footage and maybe explain a few of the details along to make the video a bit interesting. Right, so what you're after seeing there in the time lapse is the insulation being cut and fitted in. So you just measure the height of the ceiling plus maybe 2 centimetres just to make it snug. Lay it out in the ground, roll it out in the ground and cut it with a straight edge. As you can see there, just fit it in from the top. It helps if you have 2 people, just feel for the brackets with your fingers. Put a slit in with the Stanley knife. Push it through and that'll hold it in. So we've done that all around there now. We've brought out the wire for the light above the bed, etc., and the switch. There's a socket down there, and then the pipes have been adjusted for the radiator. There's a larger radiator that's going to be coming out there. Next thing then is going to be the stud work. I'll do a time lapse of that and maybe just show you how we do around the window in detail then. The insulation is reasonably good to work with. Obviously you need gloves and a mask and goggles and stuff because it is irritable. The stud in the corner is going to hold that in. It looks a bit floppy there at the moment, but that'll all be held in by the stud work. So that's more or less it. Right, so the detail around the windows. I'll just tell you how now it's done. You measure your opening from stud to stud, add 100mm onto it, and when you've that cut, then come back 50mm either side. So with these rails, the long side always faces out, so it's used on the floor, it's used on the ceiling, and then it's used the window openings there like that. Same here. So you come back 50mm in the long side, cut a 45 that way. The short side on the back, you cut it straight, dead straight on the back. So 45 out on the front, dead straight, and then you bend it up. That gives you your fixings. Just a tip when you're installing your studs to use a straight edge to make sure they're perfectly straight, as the insulation tends to bow out the stud before you fix it onto the brackets. If you're on your own, you can clamp a straight edge to it. After cutting studs, use a hammer just to tap down the corners again. Putting up the double-sided tape now. Right, so what we're doing here is we're going to install in the vapor barrier membrane. There's double-sided tape on the studs there. You can't actually see it because it's clear when you peel off the other side. So you just fill it up, you leave a bit to extend up onto the ceiling and onto the wall, just so you can get your sealant in and get a proper seal. Just try and make it as taut as you can, I suppose. Just make sure it's not too creased or whatever. So basically it's about 50mm extra than the length of the ceiling. That allows you to put 25mm up onto the ceiling, 25mm up onto the floor. Can be a bit awkward going around corners. We went around 2 corners here now in this one. But just to give you an idea just what we do, you fix from the top, along the top first, and then come down along, sticking it into the studs. You can see he's pressing it in there to the double-sided tape, and that keeps it on. Basically that's just to keep it on while before the slabbing is done basically. But if this was timber work, you'd use a staple gun instead of double-sided tape, and then you get there's a tape then just for the joints. You'll see us putting it up here now, and that's more or less it. Simple enough. The tape is extremely sticky, so just make sure you start it off right, because if you try to undo it, it'll actually tear the membrane, as I found out the hard way. So that's the membrane I'm using, Gerband SD to SD control. So there, you probably seen there's double-sided tape goes up first. You put it up and peel it off, and then you cut your membrane about 50mm longer, so there's a bit of an overlap bottom and top. That's the tape to join them then. Extremely sticky stuff, as you can see. The 586 is for joining, and the window then is done with a separate one here. It's split release tape. Basically there's two. There's a double tape on the back to make it easier to put on. Explain that again. Just going around there with double taping. This is what's going to be used on the windows, 25mm, because we don't have much of a reveal. And there's going to be a thin board and put over that so we can blast. Right, so that's the vapor barrier membrane up. All the way around. It's relatively easy to do. That's the tape around the window, and that's the tape for the joints. And then you put a sealant all around the perimeter, so along the ceiling, down the wall there, along the floor, up that wall, all around. That's the sealant used. Vortex 6400. Just work it whatever way you can around the windows, make sure it's all sealed. Next thing so will be to put this insulation around the window and the slabbing. That'll be do time lapse of that maybe as well, and then skim coat after that. We'll be boarding over the ceiling as well, and that's gonna have to be skimmed in somehow. So I'll probably do videos basically the whole lot. I'll be doing the whole room anyway, from start to finish. It's a room in my home house. It's not a customer, so I'm taking my time with it.